Hi everyone, welcome to a deep dive video on my cinematic real-time mixing system, completed for my master's degree final project. When evaluating the purposes of mixing and sound design in linear media, there are a plethora of functions determining how we perceive character and narrative. When these functions are employed over time, sound in linear media can provide a sense of narrative movement, building and releasing tension throughout the course of a scene or sequence, and creating a sense of imminence and expectation. This is known as temporal vectorization. The use of non-musical sound design to provide narrative vectorization and emotive information has become increasingly popular in horror cinema, with use of sound scoring, also known as the integrated soundtrack, leveraging the dynamics, timbres, and textures of synchronized sound to form a vectorized scene. As the medium of games is becoming increasingly cinematic, and the use of the integrated soundtrack is a highly effective and popular means of eliciting emotion and forming narrative movement in linear media, I wanted to create a system which could mirror these techniques in games, forming temporal vectorization in a non-linear format. When approaching the design of this system, a key technical objective was to provide temporal vectorization and a narratively satisfying experience, regardless of a player's actions or the order they complete them in. To support this objective, I created a short survival horror game, wherein the player must find a key and escape their surroundings while being attacked by zombies. Within this game, a scenario-based approach to level design was taken, wherein the player is given the ability to traverse the map at their own pace and in an order of their choice, and a series of gameplay scenarios are triggered at various points throughout the map. After completing the game, it was time to design both sound assets and the real-time mixing system in Wwise and UE5. I started this process by creating distinct diegetic ambiences for each area of the map, based around a dark industrial palette. These consisted of area loops featuring wind, outdoor gunshots and bird calls, played through AK acoustic portals to provide an immersive and realistic stereo image, as well as swinging chains, and flickering lights. As well as this, to increase tension and apprehension in the player, the system was created playing randomized creaks, bangs and scrapes relative to the player's position in the map. After having done this, several mix states were created as progressions of this neutrally balanced soundscape, allowing for the building and culmination of tension leading to the first enemy encounter. The first of these states, entitled Suspense, is set by a trigger box as the player begins to explore the map, seeking to build anticipatory tension through the foregrounding of player foley and environmental one-shots, and the lessening of area loops such as wind and room tone, inducing a heightened state of bodily and situal awareness in the player. Further, a transitional mix state was created entitled Pre-Scare. In this state, many diegetic elements are removed from the mix, with a harsh, metallic, non-diegetic sound-colored drone taking precedence. This state holds perhaps the strongest suggestion of anticipatory horror, with an audience expecting a near-immediate break to the silence. The final state, used when the player encounters any enemy, was entitled Scare. Within this mix state, diegetic area and object loops are increased in volume, with non-diegetic loops dominating the mix. After having created these mix states, it was important to consider implementation, how mix state changes would occur, and how implementation could achieve a repeatable cinematic effect under unconstrained gameplay circumstances. In order to provide responsiveness, the mix changes between states Suspense and Pre-Scare, as well as Suspense and Scare, were highly contextual, being based on the player's line of sight. In order to achieve this, a system which summarizes the contents of the player's line of sight was created. This system functions via a sight cone component attached to the player character. A system was created in which to scale this sight cone to the player's immediate environment, ensuring the bounds of the cone do not exceed walls and other obstructions. To determine the setting of appropriate game states, a secondary system was created. This system, functioning via a timer, sets to check whether an enemy is overlapping with the sight cone every half a second by the use of an actor has tag node. If an actor holding the tag zombie overlaps with the side cone, the Boolean variable player can see zombie is set as true. After having created a system to determine the player's line of sight, it was important to determine whether an enemy could see the player. In order to do this, information was taken from the zombie's AI sensing, setting the Boolean zombie sees player as true when the enemy's vision sensing is updated. The collection of this information culminates in the creation of the following systems. The first of these systems sets the mixed state pre-scare, as this pre-scare state is designed to elicit tension through the anticipation of immediate danger. Relevant criteria were selected. The first conditions this system must meet is that the zombie sees player Boolean is true, and the player can see zombie Boolean is false, meaning that the state pre-scare can only be set if the player cannot see a nearby enemy, increasing the impact of an impending enemy attack. Similarly, a system was created to set the mixed state scare when an actor with the tag zombie overlaps with the player's sight cone, denoting that the player has seen a zombie. To reset the mixing system back to the mixed state suspense after an enemy encounter has ended, a collision sphere component was added to the player character. Further, a timer was set to check if enemies were in the bounds of the aforementioned collision sphere, setting the state back to suspense if no enemies are nearby. Though the progression of these mixed states serves as a satisfying building of tension over one enemy encounter, I wanted to create a more overarching narrative movement throughout the game, ensuring I wouldn't lose any of the tension built by reverting back to the original suspense mixed state. To do this, a secondary mixed state group, one which would progress the dynamics and balance of the mix throughout the course of each playthrough, was created. The mixed states within this group were referred to as progression states. Each of these 4 states progressively increased the dynamics of both non-diegetic sound-coloured tones, as well as harsh, diegetic elements of the soundscape. Progression states were not increased by preset, location-based means such as trigger boxes or pre-scripted events, but instead by a system incrementing a number of events float value each time a zombie stops overlapping with the player's collision sphere. This on-component and overlap event denotes that the player has either killed or escaped any enemy in their vicinity, meaning each encounter has ended. This system triggers a custom event, activating a script setting the appropriate progression state based on the number of events float, set after each enemy encounter. After implementing this system, it was time to test it, allowing me to determine its emotive effects against a simpler system with no progression states, and only simple states denoting exploration in combat. To test this system, participants were divided into 2 groups, playing the 2 versions of the game. They were then asked to fill in a questionnaire relating to the intensity of their emotive experience with the given version of the game, along with some open-ended questions. Upon testing, compelling results were drawn. The presence of the cinematic mixing system was able to elicit a significantly greater generalized emotional response in players, and encourage a greater sense of interest, variation, and narrative movement across potentially repetitive gameplay events. The culmination of this testing proves the value of this approach to mixing in video games, with a system such as the one discussed within this video holding strong results in relation to the effects of cinematic mixing and sound design techniques within non-linear media, and outlining a potentially effective method in forming narrative vectorization in unconstrained gameplay scenarios. Thank you for watching. I will end this video with a quick demonstration of the system.